morning, everybody. This is Sarah Smith here, a horticulturist here at Rogers Gardens, and thank you so much for joining us today on our Thursday edition live stream. Today we're going to be talking about our featured plant of the week, and obviously it's hydrangeas. So I'm going to be talking all things hydrangeas, care, styles and tips and all that kind of stuff, how to prune hydrangeas, and show you what we've got going on here at Rogers. This, of course, is a live stream, so you can ask your questions down below, and we will do our best to get to them. If we don't get to them during the live stream, we'll try to answer those and in the comments down below for you as well. So today, hydrangeas. We have so many different kinds of hydrangeas. This is like the great time for hydrangeas. They're just starting to come into bloom, so you can see I've got some with just little buds starting, and it's just so exciting to look at that and just know that that pop of crazy color is going to come out really soon. I've got some in full bloom, from blues to pinks to like purpley colors as well, talking a little bit about how to water, maintain, and care for them, and also how to prune them, which is a pretty important factor for hydrangeas. So the first ones I want to show you here that I have, these are what we are calling garden hydrangeas. So these are the kinds that you plant in the ground that will come back for you year after year after year. But we also carry what we lovingly call patio pretties. These are the little hydrangeas, great for things like Mother's Day. Even sometimes we have these in Easter time. These are greenhouse grown hydrangeas. So these are the kinds that you put out in your patio for a really great burst of color. You're going to kind of treat them a little bit like how you would treat like a poinsettia or an Easter lily. So they're really, really beautiful, especially to like bring in the house for like Mother's Day brunch, something like that, because they're just really full and extra showy. So we have a whole range of different kinds of things. The ones that you plant in the ground, when you're planting these, especially around in this area, they want a little bit of protection, but they don't need full, deep, dark shade. They actually don't do well in full, deep, dark shade. They also don't like to be too terribly wet. They do like moisture, but they want rich, well-draining soil, basically on these. When we grow hydrangeas, even if you wind up buying a blue hydrangea, our soil is very non-acidic here. So we have very basic soil. And what happens with that is they slowly lose their blue color. The blue color is from having an acidic soil. So if you go back east, you'll notice all their hydrangeas are blue, and what do they want? Pink hydrangeas. So they're always trying to change their pink hydrangea or their blue hydrangeas to pink. And what do we want here? We all want blue hydrangeas because naturally we grow pink hydrangeas very, very well. So there's some tricks to that. So if you buy a blue hydrangea, you do need to use a bluing formula, something like this. So you need to change the acidity of your soil, and you don't need to get down into like doing pH tests and things like that. It's not that complicated. All you got to do is use a nice, good blue hydrangea formula. They do want to be fertilized, and when you fertilize them, even if you have a pink one, an acidic mix fertilizer works very, very well for hydrangeas. This is not necessarily going to turn your pink hydrangeas very blue because this is not adding a ton of acid. This one definitely will. So if you have even say like this one, this is a Newport hydrangea. The colors on these are absolutely gorgeous when they get into full color. If you allow them to go pink, they're a very fuchsia, really saturated pink color. It's not a pale pink like this. It's just an absolutely saturated, beautiful fuchsia-y kind of pink color. If you add the bluing formula, they turn into a really absolutely beautiful deep purple blue color. They're absolutely gorgeous. I love them both ways. This is one where I would maybe even change this yearly. One year let it go pink, one year do it blue, just because the color both ways is super great on it, and I absolutely love it. So this bluing works very, very well for that. The key with these big leaf type hydrangeas is how you're pruning them. I have so many people come to me every single year and say, you know, my hydrangeas didn't bloom for me at all. And it's because of the way they trimmed them. You have to be really careful about how you're pruning these hydrangeas. They bloom on the old wood. So when you want to prune these is right after they're done flowering, and you don't want to go super deep down into the stem. If you go down too far, you're not going to get any good blooms on them. You're going to cut the little blooms completely off because they set the blooms on the tips really, really early after they stop blooming. So you want to make sure that really it's best with these to not prune them at all. So let's try to not take something that gets naturally maybe 3 to 4 feet tall and try to shove it into a 2-foot box because it's not going to bloom for you if you try to keep cutting it back, cutting it back, cutting it back. It does bloom on the old wood, but you don't want to cut it back too far and cut the tips off, because you won't even notice when they're setting it, and you might cut all those tips off, and then you're not going to get any blooms for that year. So that's absolutely heartbreaking. I feel so bad when people come in and tell me that, and I'm like, there's really nothing you can do until wait till next year to get it to flower. So the tip is prune it after it's done blooming. So they start blooming in the springtime. You're going to prune them probably in the summertime. Just deadheading them too keeps them very, very nice and keeps them nice and compact. And at that time when they're fully done blooming, that's when you can do a little bit of shaping. You want to take out any old dead wood, any cross branching, keep them from being maybe too lopsided. You do that kind of trimming, but try to not take a 3-foot plant and make it a 2-foot plant, because you're not going to get flowers on it. Naturally, the Newport one's really nice because it's pretty compact, so this is a great one if you do want a smaller one. Stays to about 3 feet by 3 feet, maybe a 4 if you're not ever pruning it at all. So if you can let it be 4 by 4, great. You don't have to prune it at all, just cut out that dead stuff, kind of make it a little bit shapely, but you don't have to take it down for size. When it comes to irrigating these, they do like to be kind of evenly moist. So they, especially when we're getting a little bit cooler, it's pretty fine, maybe like 2 times a week. They're not super crazy deep rooted, but they do appreciate like a deeper watering to get those roots down lower into the soil. And then once we start warming up a little bit more, especially if you're very inland, maybe like about 3 times a week is okay. These do well in containers. If you're planting a hydrangea in a container, make sure that you're using acid mix mixed with the potting soil. We have an acid soil that you can mix 50-50 with a potting mix, and then continue to fertilize it throughout the year with the acid mix. There's directions on the back here specifically for how to fertilize your hydrangeas, but be aware that they do go dormant in the winter time, so you're going to lose a lot of your leaves. They're going to be a little bit sticky looking, so they're one of those things that's good if you're going to put it in a pot, have it in an area where you can maybe move it to a side yard if you don't want to look at that empty pot, or make sure you do a nice cluster of pots with something that has interesting year-round color around it as well. The hydrangeas look really, really great planted in mass. They're just so beautiful when they really come into their full gorgeous glory. Hydrangeas, there's nothing like it. I mean, one flower is big enough to make a bouquet. It's kind of amazing. I remember when I was a kid, that was always, and it just to my grandmother's chagrin, that we used to pick the flowers and pretend like those were our wedding bouquets, and she would get so mad at us. But they're just so beautiful and big and showy and just unbelievable. There's nothing like a hydrangea. They're so, so gorgeous. Also too, a good tip and trick with these is keeping them lightly deadheaded though. So when the flower starts to fade, cutting that back just so you're not looking at those funky flowers. And they dry really well, so they do really well in dried arrangements, especially the rich colors. Maintain a lot of their colors when you dry them. So if it's starting to look kind of faded, you can always bring it in the house and dry it for a really beautiful dried arrangement too. And like I said, we are live, so if there's any questions, we're here to answer those questions for you. Do we have any questions, Bimmy?
Yes, we have a few.
Yeah.
First question, shade or sun?
Okay, yeah, so they want a little bit of sun here. If you notice, most of the tags when you're looking at these say partial sun. They can't handle the deep, dark shade. What happens is they get a little leggy and the flower stays really small, and you don't really develop great color if it's in too much shade. If you're really coastal, they can handle quite a lot of sun. It's surprising. If you're very inland, giving them a little bit of protection. One thing I do really notice with these is these don't deal well with reflected heat off of like cinder block walls or stucco houses or glass windows. I had one time worked on a property where a woman had some really beautiful white hydrangeas in front of her living room window. We had a really, really hot day, and it fried them all. And they absolutely turned crispy, and it ruined the flowers. It was really kind of sad. And it was that reflection reflective heat off the window just basically magnified onto the plants. So eventually she had to take them out because they just got too tall for that area and they were constantly getting burned every year. So more, if you live very inland, morning sun to about like 1 o'clock even would be totally fine, and a little bit of protected shade. They do really well planted under trees and stuff where they're getting dappled shade, or like on a patio area where maybe you have like an overhang where you are getting some direct sunlight but getting some dappling in there. They do really, really well with that. They absolutely love that.
Fantastic. Thank you,
Yeah.
Sarah. Can these grow in the desert?
Probably not very well. You'd probably have to baby them quite a lot and keep them cool. It would be hard because I would think in the desert you'd probably want to put them in a pot, but what happens when you deal with pots, especially in areas where you get a lot of heat like that, the roots heat up and they don't like to have those hot roots like that. So that might be kind of tricky. If you have an area where you feel like you can grow things like camellias, if you're doing camellias out in the desert in an area, maybe. My grandparents used to live out in the desert once they retired, and they did great with roses, but no hydrangeas, no camellias out there, all when they lived down here in Huntington Beach. So I don't know about that one. That might be a tricky one.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. And
Yeah.
then can you touch on the soil and its relationship to the color of the hydrangea?
Yeah, so what it is it's about the acidity of the soil. So out here we don't have acidic soil. So when we're growing things like camellias and gardenias, azaleas, hydrangeas, and blueberries, they need an acidic soil. So we have to add things to add acidity to the soil. So like our down to earth, this is, as if you watched any of my other live streams, you know I'm a big down to earth fan. The down to earth adds some good acidity to the soil. So we have very basic soil. This has things like cottonseed meal and things like that to add the acidity to the soil. If you're adding this to a pink hydrangea or a white hydrangea, it's not going to change the pH so much that you're going to turn it bluish, maybe a tinge, but not a lot. This one here, this one you mix with water. This one you just put on the ground as a granular and you just water it in. It's really easy. You just throw it on, water it in. It works its way into the soil. This one you mix with water. This is a bluing formula specifically. So if you have a color like this and you want to make sure you keep it blue, you need to use something like this, because eventually it will revert to the pink color, which is fine too. I think it's absolutely beautiful as well. But if you're specifically like, I'm buying a blue enchantress and you want to keep it blue, you got to keep doing this. And you don't have to do it every single year. You can alternate. So that's why I think I like the Newport so well, because the Newport has a beautiful pink color, but also has a really beautiful blue color as well. So if you're alternating yours, that's absolutely fine. You can get the best of both worlds. I've even seen where, and I think it's beautiful, but you can kind of tell if someone's not doing this on purpose, where they'll acidify the plant, but they won't pour it around super evenly, and you'll notice one side is blue and one side's kind of pink, which I think is absolutely great. If that's not what you're aiming for, that's just because you watered it not very evenly, and one side's getting a lot more acidity, and one side, and you'll see that mostly with big plants, not little plants like this, but mature plants, you'll see that in, and one side is not getting that acidity. There is a really beautiful 100-year-old hydrangea near downtown Huntington Beach that's absolutely gorgeous. It's planted up against one of the older houses just off of Main Street, and it's been there for 100 years, and it's big and beautiful. I'd say it's probably 5 feet tall now at this point. They never ever prune it, so it's absolutely loaded with flowers every single year. If you prune it, remember, you might prune off some of the flowers, so you're not going to get that full coverage, but it's pretty much wall-to-wall flowers. And I've noticed that some years they add the acidity and they only kind of do it to one side. I think they're doing that purposely because it looks really, really cool. But that's how you change the color. So if you live back east, you're going to naturally have blue hydrangeas because it's very acidic soil back there. So you have to do something to get it back to the basic. If you live here, you got to add the acidity to make them blue.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah.
A quick question on the leaves.
Yeah.
Sometimes the tips get burned. Why might that happen, especially if it hasn't been too hot lately?
Right. So one thing too is we have a lot of salts and things in our soil too. Also depends on what kind of fertilizer you're using. I've seen it from kind of both things. Also look around for any kind of reflective light that you might be getting, some reflection off of a window. That can cause it as well. Make sure when you're watering to avoid the salinity problems, you want to water very deeply. You don't want to water your hydrangeas every single day. They do need a chance to allow the top surface to dry out. So you want to make sure you're not watering every single day for short bursts. You want to water for really, really deep, long sessions, and you want to do that every couple of days. That helps too with any kind of salt buildup. Push that away. If you're not using an organic fertilizer, and here at Rogers we only do organics, you can also add salinity problems from the non-organic soil or fertilizers. Also too, some of them are really, really strong, so you got to be really careful with those, that you're not doing it at full blast or even too much. With an organic fertilizer, you're never going to burn your plants. You're only going to waste it, is all you're going to do. With an inorganic fertilizer, you can burn your plants with it, so be careful with that as well. So hopefully that answers your question and you feel like one of those applies to you. If not, call us here and we can always answer questions for you as well.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah.
Another question here. What does it mean when the stems are black but the hydrangea is doing well?
Well, some of the stems actually on these go kind of dark. Like if you look at this one has a black stem. It's absolutely beautiful. So this is the blue enchantress, and if you look at this, it is a solid black stem. I think that makes it look very, very attractive. So some of them naturally kind of have a dark black stem like that. This one here, I'm noticing like lining on that, so it's really not a big problem. This one naturally has more of a green stem, but if you look at this one, it's totally black stemmed already, so it could be the variety that you have. I think that actually adds kind of an interesting element to it, which is really fun, especially when you're designing to find something to maybe pick up on that black color in another plant, so it kind of brings that fluidity and the recall of one color to another area in your garden. I think is a really useful gardening tip, and really makes your garden look, you know, well planned out, and kind of gives it a flow where you're looking at the black and the blue, and maybe you're recalling the blue and something else over here and the black and something else over here. Really think is absolutely a beautiful way to make your garden look really planned out and just absolutely gorgeous.
Agreed. Thank you.
Yeah.
Another question. So the smaller ornamental ones, can they be
Yes.
planted in your yard?
They can. So I don't want to give anybody high hopes that they're going to do super, super well planted in your garden. If you're going to do and you'll have it for a whole season, so don't worry about it being a super short-lived thing. So like, let's say you want to do a really showy pot by your front door, and it's one that you change out frequently to be seasonal. This is great for that. So you can plant it in the ground, it'll be totally fine. Plant it in a pot especially, be totally fine. But it's not something that's going to repeat and come back like a true garden hydrangea. This was grown in a greenhouse, whereas these ones were grown probably in shaded outdoor areas. This one was grown inside, so it's going to be a lot more tender, a lot more temperamental to temperature changes, because this has been absolutely babied. So if you throw it outside, it might go ee! So make sure you're not doing hot direct afternoon sunlight on something like this. These are good for in the house for a short period of time. Eventually they want to be outside because they need good air circulation, and they do need sunlight. Especially really bright indirect sunlight is good on these too. So you can plant them in the ground. Will it come back and be as beautiful as this one next year? Probably not. So if you really want something in the ground, go with something that's meant to be planted in the ground. You're going to be a lot more successful and a lot more happy with your results down the road on that.
Thank you. Someone's asked, can you plant blue next to pink?
Yes, but you do have to work on keeping this one acidified, if you want this one blue and this one pink. So you have to acidify, and you're trying to do it around the drip line. So the drip line on the plant is wherever the farthest edges of the plants are. If you're pouring it right at the base, that's okay too, but it's much better to get it around the drip line. It's going to take up more and it's going to be affected. If there's a plant, these are right next to each other, say these are very, very close to each other, and you're getting the drip line, you might get some of this one too. So again, you might have that situation where you have half the side is purplish and half this side is pinkish, because remember, this is a pink one, so this one will go purple instead of blue, whereas this one's gonna lose its color, go even probably more white. You might get a little bit of pink tinge and maybe a little bit of blushing on this one if you just let it go, but this one's probably gonna go more white than blue. It just depends on what the original color is. The pink ones definitely go more purpley than these like super deep blue ones go a little more blushy and a little more white.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah.
Someone would like to know if you can raise that yellow formula again.
Oh,
They
yeah.
missed the name.
So this one here, the bluing formula, this is a Grow More Hydrangea bluing formula. This one you mix with water, so it's a granular inside here. You can hear it as I shake it up. This one you mix in with the water and you water it in. Whereas this one, for fertilizing and generally keeping it happy and healthy, keeping it well flowering, you want to use this one. If you're bluing your hydrangea, don't just use this one. You also need to fertilize it, so you want to make sure that you're doing something to keep it happy and healthy, and then you're doing something for it that's more cosmetic. This is not going to replace your fertilizer. I think that's an important thing for everybody to know, because I don't think necessarily everybody understands that. So you need both of these. If you're just keeping them pink, just this guy works.
Thank you. Okay, so there are a number of questions asking about red hydrangeas.
Yeah, I don't have any right now. We are getting new ones. I didn't notice any in there, but not everything's flowering at the
Okay,
moment.
some specific questions, or I guess one specific question is, how do you keep them red, or how do you get them redder?
So you can't, maybe making them even more basic, but here that's not the issue that we're worrying about. The acidity is what's gonna really work hard on keeping them blue, but naturally our stuff reverts to the pink, white. The reds will stay red. Maybe adding more basic to it. I haven't done like a true red and maintained a true red. Those have been a little bit newer on the market, so I haven't seen what happens to them if you're just fertilizing them regularly. They do need some acidity, so I wonder if you're feeding them with an acidic mix, if that might mess with that red a little bit potentially. That's something I would really have to look more into. So leave those comments in there so I can answer on those later, because that red one is a little bit newer out on the market, and like I said, I've never personally maintained them. I've done the blues and pinks and purples, but I've never done a true red one. So yeah, leave all those questions in there so I can get to them for sure.
Okay, and then a quick question on cutting.
Yeah.
Let's see, it says, do you have any tips for it, whether to hammer the stem or cut the stem in the middle?
Oh, for floral
Yes, for
arranging.
floral
Okay.
arrangement.
Yeah, so I have done some floral stuff. I've taken a handful of floral classes. You know, I have noticed that they do that. Mostly you hammer the edges of hard stemmed things. This is very amateur florist talk here, just be aware, because I'm a horticulturist, not a florist, but I have done some floral stuff. I know when you're forcing things to flower inside that are on woody stems, you hammer the edges of them. Leave that one in there too. I'll talk to Anita and some of our florists here and ask them about that question, because I kind of remember that. I know when you buy them, they always have them baggied in little baggies of water, each individual one, and you have to pull those off because they do wilt kind of quickly. So it probably helps them bring the water up, just like when you hammer the ends of say like a dogwood or something that we don't normally grow here, but you can force them. You hammer the ends of those to make sure they are sucking that water up. So yeah, that's maybe a thing. I don't even know for sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think we'll still have that question below if you'd like to more thoroughly answer later?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll talk with Onita. She just, I know, did a really beautiful segment live for all of the Mother's Day arrangements and stuff, showing all of those, and just absolutely gorgeous. And we have such a great price point range on them this year, which is really exciting. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. So here's a question on the bluing formula or the bluing agent.
Yeah.
A number of people would like to know when you apply that, and is it too late to apply that this year?
No. You'll notice the change kind of happening if you start it now. Most of your hydrangeas are going to look like this one versus this one. This one, I pulled this one specifically because it was really already showing some amazing color. But if you look at this one, no color is showing on this guy at all. You can't even really tell. It's all still super green. So if you're applying that and it's at this stage now, you'll notice that color change. And that's I kind of like starting it a little bit later. It's almost kind of like you get to play Frankenstein a little bit. You get to change the color and watch it gradually change. So I think that's really fun. This is greenhouse grown, so your hydrangeas in your ground should not look like this. This is really shocking how much great color. If you walk through our area where we have all our outdoor hydrangeas, they're just showing little peaks of color, but there's still quite a lot of buds on this that are still very green, so you can absolutely change that. Changing from blue to pink is going to take some time though, because they have to get all of that out of there. So this is not going to change to pink within this season. You might get a little blushes here and there, and even this one naturally has a little bit of blush. I'm noticing there's some pretty blush, and it looks so great on this little guy here. But you're not going to get fully out of your blue to pink, but from your pink to blue, you will notice that within this season for sure.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sarah. It looks like that's all the time that we have for today.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, so leave your questions about the red ones down below, and then I'll get with Onita about doing cut ones as well. If you're cutting these to bring into your house, that's absolutely fine to cut them. Remember, most of them, like this guy, does bloom on the old wood, so that's okay to do that. But you're also going to lose some of your flowers for the next year if you cut too much, so make sure that you don't cut too hard. Only shape your hydrangeas right after they bloom. Don't reshape later in the year, or you're gonna run the risk of losing some of those flowers on there as well. So anyways, thank you so much for tuning in with us, everybody. So fun to do these with you and show the new plant of the week. It's really exciting because it's a passion thing for me to talk about all the new things. I really love doing this with all of you and answering all of your questions with you guys. Make sure that you're not only on our Instagram or our Facebook page, but check out our YouTube page and subscribe there as well. There's so much great content. We're always filming new things for that too. And a lot of that stuff is a little more technical, so you can get some of those really technical questions answered for you there as well. And then also get on our mailing list. Our mailing list is great. It's going to tell you all the new things that come in. You will be privy to all the great sales and stuff that we have here, all the new things that we have coming up. You'll see all the checklist of what to do in your garden for the month. That checklist is amazing. I read that checklist all the time, multiple times within a month, just so I remember all that stuff. Ron Vanderhoff did a really great job with that checklist, so make sure you check that out as well. You can always shop our online boutique too. Mother's Day is coming up. Hydrangeas make a really good Mother's Day gift, and we have really beautiful basketed ones planted with underplantings, and all kinds of really beautiful things in there for Mother's Day. And then we do curbside pickup still here as well. So thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. We'll get to all those questions. If you come to this a little bit later, make sure you tag all your hydrangea loving friends down below, and be well, be safe, and happy gardening, everybody. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.